promise. If you've never done it before, it can be a little bit tricky, but once you get it, you've got it, it's good, and you can move on. So what you need is a rotary cutter with a sharp blade. A dull blade is actually more dangerous than a sharp blade, I can tell you from an ER visit. I think the best standard ruler to get is a 6 by 24. This is an Omni Grid, and I added little stick-ons so this doesn't move around. The largest cutting mat that you can fit into your sewing room, onto a table, onto a flat surface, whatever you have, the better, because quilting can get kind of big. So this one is 36 long, which is a yard, and it's 24 tall, which is not a yard. But it's pretty big. So fabric. Fabric off the bolt, cotton quilt weight fabric, is 42 inches long, typically. So what is a yard of fabric? Question. It's 36 by 42. This top and bottom edge of fabric is called a selvage. So when you're cutting fabric, you hold it like this, selvage to selvage, and you fold it in half. And you see how when I shift it this way, that bottom fold looks kind of wonky. It looks a little bit, I don't know, maybe twisted. That's because I'm moving the fabric off the grain. Fabric is made up of lengthwise and crosswise little threads of fabric that weave together and create the fabric we're using to create this cotton. So when I'm holding it selvage to selvage, just like this, as much as possible, I want that bottom crease to be really, really flat. I want to try to line up the crosswise grain and the lengthwise grain, but I want to try to line up the grain of the fabric so I'm not cutting on the bias. The bias is when you cut totally diagonal. You're cutting totally off grain, and that means your fabric is going to stretch. If you cut on the grain, it won't have as much give, and that's going to be helpful for us when we're quilting. Okay, so I'm holding it selvage to selvage. Now I put it down on my mat. I learned how to cut fabric 2 ways, and I am choosing to do it the more dangerous way. I think it's more accurate. People are going to watch this video and say, oh my gosh, that's so bad, that's dangerous. So I'm going to show you both ways, but you're probably going to pick my way. It's better. All right, so the first way you end up having to move the fabric around. And if you move the fabric, then sometimes things get off. So I just line up the edge of this ruler, and I try to line up one of these cross guidelines, with the bottom fold of my fabric so that everything is square. And then I just give it a nice little slice. So I hold it, all 5 of my fingers right in the center. I just really push down with my shoulder. That's gone. Okay, so you can either flip your mat, if you're right-handed that is, and then move the fabric to line up with the grid on your mat. And then you can measure, and you can use your mat as the guideline. Okay, so I'm just going to cut a little strip using the mat as the guideline. So I'm looking at, here's my marker. I'm going to cut maybe just 1.5 inches. I'm not even using the ruler really as a ruler. I'm using it just as a straight edge. And then I cut, always cutting away. The first one would say, the first cutting option. So there's my nice little strip. All right, my way of cutting is a bit more dangerous. You cut toward yourself at some point. But I think it's more accurate, and it's my favorite thing, faster. So I lay out my fabric, Okay, this next move is what's going to kill people. Okay, I mean, like in the comments section, they're going to be like, ugh. All right, but if you're learning, I just think you should learn this way. Don't cut off a finger, don't slice off your hand, just be careful. All right, so I'm going to use my ruler as a ruler. I'm going to ignore all the guide marks on this mat. I line up the edge of this ruler, one of the crossways guidelines with the bottom fold of this fabric, and I cut toward myself. Ooh la la! See, I didn't hurt myself, it was fine. And if I want to cut 1.5 inches, I measure 1.5 inches, and I line up this 1.5 inch guideline on my ruler. I'm totally ignoring these really wonderful grid marks on my mat. And then, another strip. So 2 ways, there's probably more than 2 ways. I'm sure there's more than 2 ways. You could do a combination of the two, come up with your own way, but those are my favorite ways of cutting fabric.